that's as you've gotten into Kilo SMP, what that's entailed, and kind of how many athletes you currently coach at?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I'll give you the official rundown. So since we last saw each other in our intern days, COVID hit. That kind of sucked. But at that point, since there's no sports stuff going on, I was sitting at home, and at the time, I was had a roster of about a dozen powerlifting clients, and at the time, no gym in the area actually had enough space to house that many powerlifters. All we had was like maybe one combo rack, one set of kilos, and for the viewers, it's all competition spec equipment for powerlifting. And generally, you can the kind of like practice the way you play, right? You wouldn't try to play ping pong with a tennis racket, and that's kind of how I felt with a lot of equipment available at like the local gyms where all of my clients were training out of. So I think we had like maybe 4 or 5 people in the room at one time. Um, Things would get split up. You'd have to share, take turns, go like 3, 4 people on one station, and it just wasn't feasible, especially since we were kind of all working out in like not my own gym. It was just like a local place that wasn't necessarily built for powerlifting. So COVID hit, bumming around in my apartment, not leaving the house, and for entertainment, I was like kind of looking at commercial real estate, poking around, seeing if there was a possibility for me to have my own space because I was really trying to keep up with all the powerlifters. Like I had a squat cage and plates in my living room the entirety of COVID. And once things kind of calmed down a little bit, we were having like 1 or 2 people come in on a little schedule, just like my own clients, training with me and my roommates because we were all powerlifters. And obviously, we got 4 or 5 people on, like it's still the same issue. Um, so eventually, I ended up finding a place out in St. Paul, and coincidentally, the owner of this CrossFit gym that I ended up buying out taught my 1 credit long distance running course. His name is John, and I got there and showed up, and I'm like, oh shit, I know who you are. And he gave me a really good deal. He was kind of phasing out the whole CrossFit thing that he was running. I took over everything, refitted it all for powerlifting, and slowly pieced it together. The entire gym was kind of self-funded, which was very slow and arduous, I would say. But at the very least, it was enough space for powerlifting. So it started with one combo rack, gradually worked our way up to 6 combo racks. From 0 members, kind of pushing 200 these days. So it's been pretty fun. So we're on 1 month away from our 5 year anniversary. So it's been a while.
That's cool. It's actually funny. I hadn't been to Minnesota or really the Midwest since I graduated in 21. I went back there in June this summer, and it was kind of for a conference and whatnot. I was down in Edina, yeah, no, Eden Prairie,
Yeah.
and uh, I was looking up just gyms in the area because I'm like, all right, I got a couple days here. Like, if I wanted to bounce somewhere, beyond the hotel gym. I know there's like Los Campeones, but one of the other things that comes up now is obviously your place, right? Like, like that's
Yep.
pretty. I think that's awesome, and I'm like, oh man, like I know Sean. Unfortunately, I didn't have a car, so I couldn't get over there like real fast with other conference things going on. But I think you speak to, you've gone from roughly, we'll call it 12 at the beginning of COVID. Obviously, you were working with people before that,
Mhm.
200 members, and we'll get into, the type of people you train because they're high class in powerlifting.
Mhm.
I don't want the listeners to think like they're just your general pop. I think you have everyone from probably coming in the door for a day pass to people who compete at the national and above levels.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
we'll unpack that in a little bit, but one of my first, I think, encounters with you, you may not even know this. This was before we even interned because we went to the same university rec center.
Mhm. Yep.
I recall at the time I didn't know who you were, but I would see you around, and you'd be, I don't know if it was people that you were training or even just friends, but you're always helping people, kind of coach them up in little ways. Like at least that was the dynamic that as I'm working myself out, like I kind of was like, man, this guy like really knows his stuff, which I think is really cool. And from an early, like from afar observation, it always seemed like you were building community and connection. And obviously, as
Mhm.
running your own business, I'm sure that's huge. Everything from business partners or media marketing to build, however much you've done yourself to also the daily interactions, remote, online, as well as in person that you have. Maybe you could speak to that. Like,
Yeah.
How'd you get into powerlifting? Was it a sense of community that you felt, and now that's something you've carried along? Yeah, just walk me through what that's looked like.
Yeah, yeah. I actually should have started with that because way back in my college days, I'm the original founder of Go for Barbell, so the powerlifting club at the U. And you're right, yeah. Like so, we'd have meetings every week, and I'd get everyone in. We'd have like one team lift a week, and through that time, I would help everyone. I'd do my little president spiel, try to get more members, and it was tons of fun. You're right. The kind of it's kind of silly because the that's actually how I ended up starting powerlifting coaching was because so many people kept asking me questions in the gym, like at the rec well, that I'm like, dang, I should just charge for this. Because like, wait, at that point in time, kind of the powerlifting coaching service type of thing wasn't as big as it was at this moment in time. So I felt it was really cool, actually. Definitely really enjoyed helping people learn squat, bench, deadlift in the gym. And I like talking about lifting, obviously. So having like a big crew of people where I get just yap about exercise was tons of fun. And that kind of came to fruition when with the powerlifting gym stuff happened. But throughout that time, we had the club. We were able to fund our way to collegiate nationals for USA powerlifting. So everyone trained well enough to qualify and go do a national level meet, which was really cool. And the university didn't help us all that much funding wise, but we were able to scrap up some cash, and we went down. We did a couple different ones. We did a lot of volunteering too locally. That's kind of how we came up with the funds. We did Ohio and we did Louisiana. Those are the two where we actually flew out and drove out and competed as a team during the college days. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
At that time, you know, you were still a college student, so were you both coaching and competitor at that time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I still try to compete every once in a while, but yeah, the second place, that's my claim to fame. Second place at Collegiate Nationals in 2021, which was it was a weird thing because like like finished school, um, but because of COVID, they allowed people from the previous graduating year
Hmm.
um, to sign up for the next year because the event actually took everyone's money. It didn't refund them. It was a huge issue actually. So a bit of a consolation prize for me to get one last college collegiate nationals in.
Okay.
That's my claim to fame for now. These days, like when I coach these like 17, 18, 19-year olds, and they're all way stronger than me. So I don't know what they're putting in the water, but maybe it's the good coaching. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy, I think, see how much has changed with the general, like, public knowledge of, I think, training fitness in the last, like, decade even. But who taught you? Like, are you self-taught? Like, how obviously you have, plenty of people coming up to you that you've now made into like coaching, and this is kind of a path that you've kind of gone along. But were you playing sports early on and realized you want to get stronger, or you just kind of picked up weights one day, or was there someone that like taught you what you know? And then how'd you continue to maybe have mentors across, like, obviously we had some overlap at Minnesota, but I imagine there's been others.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, traveling even farther back in time. The My lifting career started in high school. So my freshman sophomore year, I would go in after school. Like one of the kind of upperclassmen, he was like, "Hey, you should come lift after school," because they let us have like an open gym in the football weight room, and I liked it pretty much right away. And in my head, I was originally lifting to get better at track, and I'm not particularly tall or athletic, to be honest. I don't think the lifting even got me any faster, just because the type of training I was doing was almost entirely geared towards hypertrophy. In hindsight, uh, not any more springy than I was as a 15, 16-year old, unfortunately. But I liked squatting, I liked benching. Didn't do any deadlifting, to be honest. I think back in the day they had all the actual athletes squat, bench, and clean, and I hated clean and jerk. So the never did that, and to this day I'm still terrible at deadlifting because I spent 2 years squatting and benching almost exclusively. But it was tons of fun. I liked it. Kept up with it all the way to college, and then really at that point I was like, wow, I like squatting, benching, and then eventually deadlifting. Let me look at something to be competitive in. I wonder if this is like a thing. It turns out there's powerlifting as a competitive activity. And I almost flew down to Texas to do my first powerlifting meet until I realized we have local events we can do. The Actually just in Maplewood. So eventually, I did do my first powerlifting meet in 2017, I think. So my sophomore year of college, I think. So yeah, the beyond that, like the bulk of my time lifting, it was kind of self-coached or even just YouTube. Actually, like I don't know about you if you ever got into all the early YouTubers. See if I can think of who it was. Alan Thrall. Um, oh man, I watched a lot of the Elite FTS stuff, and they have their website too with their written stuff. And I kind of pieced it all together. A lot of the programs that I ran were like Smolov, those cookie cutter ones where, funnily enough, Smolov worked great for me, even though it's kind of known for being brutal and injuring people. But that's okay. There's a couple other ones, the GZCL. So they were all like templated free programs on the internet. I ran forever. And then at some point, I actually did pay a online coach for a one-off program that I ran repeatedly for an extended amount. And then once I grew beyond that, I wrote some stuff myself, trained myself for a while. I'm always like the guinea pig for a lot of things. And then when I got really serious with powerlifting, I got a full-time coach, Shawn Collins, out in New York. I worked with him for a pretty extended period of time. And that's kind of the point where I was consistently competing at the national level, and getting really specialized into just powerlifting. Because before, a lot of it was just training to look good, and theoretically to be faster, but that never happened. So yeah, the a bit of myself and a bit of actual coaching, but the it's been certainly a journey.
With some of that sort of, exploration process, I'm actually pretty similar in that a lot of my own movement, I've kind of had to figure out for myself. And I really enjoy the problem solving aspect then when I work with others and sort of catalyzing that process because they might run into similar things, whether it's a sticking point or even just a weakness, right? For a
Mm-hmm.
muscle. Grant, the populations I work with are athletic performance centered for a sport as opposed to, so we're using these as tools for different types of movements. But a lot of all the principles remain the same, right? It's just maybe
Yeah.
applied methods are slightly different. What does that look like for you? Like, do you enjoy the problem solving? Do you enjoy like being able to write programs and that like you can write tons of different programs and you just even if you have one that works, reiterating on it each year or something just to kind of see how many different ways you can do it and get different results? Is that exciting? Like, talk to me maybe about what that looks like and I don't know,
Yeah.
the program kind of changed over the last 5 years or what's in there?
Yeah, that's an
Without giving
interesting
away
one.
too many of your secrets.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of an art form actually, because the I think the biggest difference you'll see between programming for sports performance and programming for powerlifting is because powerlifting programming and what I do right now, one-on-one powerlifting coaching, is so specialized. The biggest part of the process is actually individualization for the athlete, which is a big step away from kind of what we did with hockey, where it's like a top-down framework of what should theoretically work for everyone. We kind of go the opposite way where like, yeah, we have like a rough estimate of what it should look like for like, it's a safe assumption most people are average, believe it or not. The But once we go beyond that and once we get to increasingly specialized and individualizing the programs, that's the part that I enjoy the most. And it's not partially scientific, partially vibes based, to be honest. And that's the part I like the most with what I do is taking in all the information from the athlete, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and then modifying the programs for that person over time, and really kind of continuing the progress that they're looking for. And luckily, powerlifting programming is so easy. It's the most straightforward stuff ever. It does not get very complicated comparatively for like, we don't really worry about plyos. We don't worry about like, to be honest, like I've tried to explain like tissue stuff to the client, like these like 19 to 24-year-old powerlifting kids, and just their eyes glaze over and they're like, I don't care, just put it on a spreadsheet and I'll do it. So tweaking things and gradually phasing novelty to a certain extent, and then honing in on exactly what works. And it gets kind of interesting once you get to that like top end of performance. Like we have a lot of national champions, not to be like, oh, look how great all my athletes are, or like all the people in my gym. But like if you're taking like a 200-pound guy who squats 700 and comparing it to a program for like a 120-pound girl that's squatting maybe like 330, 350, the program is completely different. Yes, it's the same movements, but the volume, frequency, intensity is completely different. And part of that individualization makes my job interesting, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't in that sense. Yeah.
That's That's rad. I mean, even for me, I've started working with adaptive populations in the last 2 years. Those are my assigned teams here at my organization, and very much an N of one to like what you're saying. And I've had as I've mentioned on a couple with a couple different guests, like I've been going through my own self audit process of like having to recalibrate what I deem like an appropriate like motor performance and or like competency type bandwidth. Like are you demonstrating a squat pattern the way I might expect? And I mean, I've had to throw that out the door, but probably there's some parallels there to some people are going to have a little bit more of a duck stance or a close stance, right? Narrow
Mm-hmm.
stance, a little bit more of a hingy squat versus based on their leverages and different things, which I'm sure you've kind of explored and or worked with the person both vibe based as well as kind of that subjective slash objective like video feedback, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. The definitely a leverage thing comes into play. Everyone, that's another big aspect of what I do for one-on-one coaching is the cueing and technique aspect of things is just as important, if not more important than the actual sets and reps and programming that they're doing. Because powerlifting is so technique based, getting someone the right cues and the right intention for what they feel like the best is for a single movement. Like everyone's going to squat a little bit differently, which is a big step away from like that big team-based programming and training that like we initially did. Is like I got like short torso, long femur guys that have to bend over like a pancake to get low enough. Powerlifting depth is hip crease below the kneecap, compared to like someone built like me or like a really short girl. Long torso, short femurs, they're going to be crazy upright. They're just going to go straight up and down. It's a different on programming. It's different on cueing, and it's different on load tolerance too. Because like that short torso, long femur person is probably going to be deadlifting significantly differently than vice versa. So, fun fact: the short torso, long femur person is probably as long as they have long arms, they're going to be really good at deadlift and really bad at squat. Versus the inverse, they're probably going to be much equally strong, if not stronger, on squat than deadlift. So when it comes to programming their total workload overall, like their spine can only take so much for that pancake
Yeah.
squatter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, especially the stronger you get. It's just
Yeah.
both the frequency and absolute load that becomes recovery adaptation type
Yeah.
limitation.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, some people are just like indestructible and you can hammer them as much as you want. And some people are delicate flowers, and they don't want to feel any pain or discomfort whatsoever. And you can work around it, or you can incentivize them to be more tolerant.
yeah. I mean, maybe using yourself as a bit of an example because I see you often deadlifting, which is actually interesting because what you say that's actually one of your weaker lifts.
Yeah.
Weaker. I mean, you're strong all around. I mean, what are some of your recent numbers? I don't know if
Yeah.
just
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I'm an example of someone who's very good at squat and very bad at deadlift comparatively. So I squat and deadlift the same weight, and I try really hard not to. Most people are going to be picking up more weight off the floor than they can put on their back and go up and down with. Um, so current numbers, I'm working towards. I'm actually competing in 2 weeks here,
oh, cool.
August 16th, and hopefully I'll squat a little more than 600. I'll probably bench around 385, hopefully, and I will hopefully deadlift the same way that I squat, but we'll see. The part of competing in powerlifting is the with the rule book. There's certain criteria you need to have for each lift to count, and the last um, couple of meets that I've done, I've had a couple of my lifts not count due to technicalities. So like I'll stand up with my deadlift, but for whatever reason, if I have soft knees or soft shoulders, they'll call me on it and the lift won't count. And then when you go and look at the database and like the records, um, it looks like I squat more than I deadlift. Like I'll like lose like 20 kilos on my deadlift on technicalities,
Uh-huh.
which is a bit of a frustrating aspect, but that's the rules.
And this is all as a 72 kg or 74?
The these days I'm competing at 82 or 83. They keep changing the weight classes. So the next one I'll be competing at 83, which is 183 pounds, I think. In the past, I competed at 74, which is 163 pounds.
Okay. That's the
Um,
I was thinking of 70 number.
yep. Yeah, yeah. And then the Olympic weightlifting classes are completely different too, and they keep changing their weight classes every other year. But for reference, I'm 5'6". Um, so that body weight makes sense for my height.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So after you've shared some numbers, I mean, I often see you doing sumo, and my guess
Mhm.
is I might be assuming this is that's your preferred deadlift, especially with just some of the competitive photos or media I've seen of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
How much do you explore, whether through its accessory movements, whether it's through like movement preparation, like exploration, like just different like hinging and or deadlift type patterns, right? So take yourself, as you're giving these examples of different like load tolerance and tissue tolerance and capacity for leverages, patient clients that you might coach up, there's, natural and or what advantages they have based on those anthropometrics and what disadvantage, like
Yeah.
coach that. Are you doing stuff with like med ball slams? Is it like just little kettlebell swings, or like are you actually trying to build up their conventional if they're a sumo? Or are you doing something crazy these days like Alec Blennis, where it's like a Zercher stiff leg RDL or something?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what kind of my experience with that is and kind of what I do with my clients. On my end, I'm always experimenting, but I'm a delicate flower personally. I'm not in the camp of being indestructible and being able to do whatever I want. Mostly because I'm far too stubborn. But in my case, my conventional deadlift compared to my sumo is over 100 pounds weaker, I think, these days. So my best conventional was probably, I'm converting from kilos because I train in with the calibrated kilo plates. But man, 530, I think was my best conventional deadlift. And my best sumo deadlift was 606. And I narrowly didn't hit 617 uh, 3 weeks ago. I'm still kind of butthurt about that one, but I got it up to my knees, but not quite. But that's a pretty big strength disparity between the two. And in powerlifting, you have the option between conventional and sumo. And it's not. I know there's always that thing that you see on the internet, like, oh, sumo's cheating. It's by the rule book. It's not. It's some people are going to be stronger conventional. It's not like you're categorically going to be stronger with your feet super wide. It's really just dependent on how you're built. So when I work with a client, the kind of what we look at is if they're not generally inexperienced in both, we'll take a couple weeks or a couple of sessions to determine which one is better or worse. I
Mhm.
generally tell people, hey, you should know how to do both and be comfortable doing both just in case. Because then, like, your conventional deadlift will make you generally stronger, even if it's not your best out of the two. And with sumo, or like, for example, if someone's generally intolerant to volume in their spinal erectors or their back in general, sumo may be more beneficial to train uh, just like collectively with all the squatting and the benching and the deadlifting. And on top of that, all the hypertrophy work that comes along with it. So we don't get super complicated. Like really, the with powerlifting, kind of the test is the measurement, and the measurement's the test. You're and this isn't true with like field sports or whatever. It's like if you're in the gym training squat, bench, and deadlift, you're going to be on a barbell squatting, benching, and deadlifting. And then when you go compete, you're going to be squatting, benching, and deadlifting. So usually what we'll do is we'll run through the technique for both, which are it's actually more similar than different, to be honest. It's just your feet are wider. And usually when we look at it, there's a couple possibilities that'll happen if someone's just getting introduced to both. Either one's going to feel great and one's going to feel terrible. Then you know which one's better, obviously. Um, or they're both going to feel somewhat equal quality wise, or like maybe one's a little bit in front of the other. or one has much better technique than the other. So in that case, we may like if you're significantly more adept and naturally good at like a conventional deadlift compared to a sumo, we
Mhm.
might roll with that for an extended period of time. Because it's not necessarily imperative that you like fully develop both at the same time or even one after the other. It really just depends on what gives you quality, consistent training, especially like with my like your general. And powerlifting is very much a hobby. If someone's having a bad time in the gym and they're very frustrated with like not having good success with a certain lift, it kind of is better to just have them do the more enjoyable one, just because they're paying you to like make progress in the gym and be happy about that progress. So we might roll with it for an extended period of time. But we don't get super into like you mentioned, like non-specific movements for those. Like a lot of the time, those will be kind of in the hypertrophy or secondary movement category where we're using variations, close near variations, or non-specific hypertrophy movements to kind of supplement that main movement. That's usually how programming is structured for powerlifting. So you'll usually go primary movement, squat, bench, deadlift, or like a near variation, like paused or safety squat bar or tempo for that main movement, the most like first and most important thing you're doing for the day, followed by like a near variation or non-specific variation. So belt squat, SSB good morning, barbell RDL, dumbbell RDL, or even, and then after that, isolation movements, because like most people want to be jacked and juicy. You got to throw in some bicep curls at least a little bit, or more specifically, leg extension, leg curls. Those have pretty reasonable carryover strength wise as you train for hypertrophy. So it all kind of fits together, and gradually you can either cue people into being good at that individual lift, or kind of force them to be stronger and better at it via hypertrophy, without just saying, "Hey, be better at it this in this specific way." But yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And I guess where I'm going or was kind of trying to go with this a little bit was like the skill acquisition side. And I think what's really unique from my observation of like powerlifting is the skill is the, squat bench dead. Now, regardless of your variation or technique, you're ideally trying to refine whatever that technique is with the outcome of lifting the heaviest load, correct? That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what you're measured by. And so I understand like the subtle variations. Have you like played around then with and that's where I was going like with the exploration, like whether it use a 45-degree hyper or reverse hyper or something because it helps cue your bracing or like how you feel pressure, sort of in the posterior chain. So that way then it translates to, oh, I have a different sense of how to brace, right? From
Yeah.
its carryover, even if it's secondary or hypertrophic intended, that the body is still learning, oh, I know, understand what meant by this cue.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can translate that if you want to call it transfer of skill from these things
Yeah.
even though there were actual physiological effects of you've packed on some muscle size and connective tissue strength to handle heavier load. That's kind of where I was going with that. I don't know if
Okay.
you elaborate.
Yeah.
Like, have you played around with, for example, even just like doing like a 45-degree like hip extension, like two sets, high reps or something prior to someone doing a deadlift as like that's kind of priming, creating some awareness, or just like structuring your things differently
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
like, the skill, I guess, is still like, well, we don't want to create too much fatigue because we still need to achieve a certain output each session or RPE, depending on how you're
Mhm.
how you're creating your prescription for dose and response. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts all around that because this is really
Yeah.
interesting and yeah, how I perceive skill acquisition within the weight room is obviously different than your setting. So that's where
Mhm.
I'd love to learn.
That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense actually. I understand what you're going for with that specific implementation, and I just find myself not really doing that. Um, most it's potentially because I work with a bunch of thick-skulled people. Not all of them are like that, but depending on kind of the ability for someone to take on information like verbally or um, doing a live demonstration, it more so depends on that first um, than actually using like some sort of proprioception type of implement before a training session. And not to say that like I actually kind of, I do sort of do something like that, but I kind of consider it a generalized warm up. Um, it does get individualized as we find out more things about the athlete. So, for example, I have like whenever I take on a new client, I have what in my head I call the "Don't Hurt Your Back" special. It's like there's like like the McGill big like supple leopard, like there's like the 11 whatever. It's my own version of that where if you're not 100% on your squat bench deadlift technique or have poor general body awareness, it kind of covers the bases in terms of being able to move your body through space reasonably well,
Hmm.
and in a way that is theoretically potentially beneficial in not hurting yourself. And I'm kind of picky when I say that.
Just by share just what those are.
Yeah, so cat cows, like it's all super basic stuff. It's like I'm generally hesitant to give someone something too complicated or goofy because there's a certain amount of buy-in that you need and a certain amount of timeliness because I'm not always working one-on-one with something with someone, and a lot of my clients are remote. So when I give someone a list of things to do, they either need to know what it is, like just off reading it, or be able to watch a YouTube video that I can send them, and they can be like, "Oh, I get it," without an aggressive amount of queuing. So cat cow is super easy. Banded suitcase carry is one where I kind of really care about with powerlifting most with a warm up is can that person control their pelvis relative to their rib cage? Because a big aspect of squat bench deadlift is being able to brace your core and transfer force from the ground in, through your body into a bar. And that's one of those things where not everyone is inherently good at it. And then on top of like the pelvis rib cage coordination, can you do a reasonably coordinated hip hinge? Can you do a reasonably coordinated squat pattern? And then on top of that, um, hip internal external rotation and shoulder mobility in a broad sense. It's all kind of baked in there. And the list of things that I give someone off the bat, it's designed to be done quickly because most people don't care about warming up. Um, like once you're old and shitty, like yeah, then you'll probably like you'll learn your lesson once you get injured enough that you actually should warm up for real. But when someone's just in the like just getting started or kind of that early intermediate time, you need to be able to give someone kind of something kind of quick and simple and straightforward, just so they actually do it and ingrain those movement patterns. But going back to kind of your example, I oftentimes don't use like a one-to-one thing where it's like, hey, before we do this movement, we're gonna activate or kind of use a isolated movement aspect from that movement training session that we're trying to work on directly. Just because depending on how much carryover there is, it can actually there can be a negative aspect to it, um, or it might just take too much time, or it might like because you can overcue someone and they just get confused. So I really try to avoid that and opt for something where it's just more directly the movement at hand. Like if we're trying to have you develop a barbell squat, once you're adequately warmed up and we have load on the bar, we can just spend more time cueing during that movement. In some cases, we may find that you have like a coordination or mobility restriction that's actually preventing the verbal or instruction, like cueing, to be effective. And then we'll kind of backtrack, correct it, or kind of think of a plan to address it when something's not one on one, and then kind of phase that in and hope that carries over. But because everything's so specific with barbell movements, um, to a certain extent, like it's a negative to overcue things or like take like a movement aspect from another isolation movement and just
Yeah.
kind of sequence it like one after the other. Where instead you could just do multiple uh, direct sets of whatever barbell movement that it would be.
Yeah. Your like observations, just coaching. It sounds, I hear a lot of like cues matter. Obviously, the specificity of, it's a barbell sport. Is there like a order or hierarchy, would you say, that you've seen? And it could just be totally anecdotal of like someone gets better because of consistency, generally, I think. But is that consistency like consistency of technique? Is it exploring different techniques where they unlock like, hey, I just found a better position, so suddenly, I quickly add 30 pounds? Is it no, we need the consistency to have a neurological system and muscular system, upgrade, if you will, right, which is just adaptation. I imagine, right, it's obviously like a blend of those, but and some it might be more than others. Some might have more of that neurological advancement depending on their training age, as opposed to something more physiological or just technique. But what does that kind of look like in your experience, both with in-person and remote,
Yeah.
overseeing, working with hundreds of people?
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of the way that I like to think about it, it's you got your neurological adaptation, which is basically technique. And then you have your musculoskeletal adaptations, which you're get bigger muscles, you're probably going to move more weight. If you're physically larger, you're going to move more weight. So it's two sides of the same coin. And kind of what my job largely entails is developing that technique and neurological adaptation first. And a lot of the programming ends up revolving around that, um, and putting that above the actual hypertrophy adaptations, or like, because most people, like if you take, let's say, a naturally muscular person or a bodybuilder that's never done like high technique based barbell stuff, they're going to be really strong, but they're the amount of weight that they're going to move won't exactly match up with what they should be able to move based on, like, if their technique was like a 1-to-1 ratio to their actual muscle mass.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where you see that, like, the noob gains come through, where it's like you already had muscle mass that can do the work, but due to the lack of coordination and technique, you actually can't output that. So um, when programming, a lot of it's like, even if it's not necessarily optimal across the board, you're kind of programming to make sure that the work that they're doing is actually fixing that more than the other side of it. Because there's always, like, I don't think it's possible for your technique to outshine your actual muscle mass. I don't think that's a thing. Um, Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But generally speaking, 99% of people have a technique or coordination, neurological adaptation discrepancy first, and that's the first thing to fix. Because if they can't coordinate a movement at medium weight, lightweight, medium weight, and really heavy weight, they're going to have a problem. It'll break down, potentially be unsafe, or it's just going to feel bad. So like that, the amount of window for that is actually much larger than what you may think. And like, because I'll give you an example. Like, let's say, for example, so the strongest 165-pound dude right now, like out in the world, like if you're 165 pounds at like 15% body fat, you have probably the same amount of muscle compared to the other 165-pound guy with the same amount of body fat. Because like that's your weight, like that's kind of what you're working with. But the discrepancy with the actual weight that you can put on your back or pick up off the ground, it's massively variable, and that's just due to that intramuscular coordination. And to a certain extent, once you get to the top end, it's sometimes it is genetics. But like we got like 165-pound dudes squatting 700, benching 440, 450, pulling 750, and you'd think those numbers are, you'd have to be like a 240-pound guy to move those weights, but like it's all just intramuscular coordination. It's all technique up until the point you get to where genetics actually matter. But you can take like your average person, train them up to like there's a point system in powerlifting, dots. It's kind of equates body weight to bar weight. So if you can take like a 200-pound guy and a 150-pound guy, and based on the weights they move, the 200-pound person can move more weight, but the lighter person, depending on the points, like they would be stronger as a ratio. There's a bunch of math that goes into it, but like the window for how much technique can help you move more weight is like actually massive. And that's kind of the reason why like a lot of the people that I work with and that go to my gym, they're like you can get someone from generally untrained to like nationally ranked much faster than what you may think, just because like the training that we do, and the technique implements that we use and how we cue everyone is that good. I don't want to say the best. It's very good. We figured it out and cracked the code. We can have 120-pound girls squatting triple body weight. It's not that hard. That's me saying that, but it's not that heavy, guys. Come on.
Yeah. No, that's cool that you mentioned that, and I think it's good that you kind of echo the inter and intramuscular coordination. What's interesting about that, and I'd love for you to maybe give us some examples if you found like methods that do help with that. Just like we could go with like squat or deadlift or something for an example of like, let's say someone is a limiting factor, like seems like, all right, they are a strong person. Maybe they have a background in bodybuilding, right? They seem to have muscle mass, and you're probably gonna expect them to like within a year or two start to like recognize some really good outputs. Just hasn't happened yet due to that technique. Like, what constraints or what type of things might you program, whether that's more of a methods based approach that you could kind of share. You can kind of create the context.
Yeah, yeah.
Does
I
it
have the most boring answer for you ever.
do more of it?
Submaximal training and progressive overload. That's like literally it. It's basically if you can have someone do, if they got 100 reps in a week, if you can get 90, 95 of the 100 reps that they're going to do to be basic, like good ish,
Mhm.
they're practicing 95 good reps and only five bad reps. Um, and even better, if they can make every single rep generally pretty good, that means they've practiced zero bad reps. And then once they've like are in the habit of practicing more good reps than bad reps, you just progressively overload them. And then as long as they have good low tolerance, because the low tolerance, it's like you don't need to be redlining someone all the time. Like really, you only need to be like hitting that top end threshold when it matters, and when you actually go need to test their strength in a meet. So the bulk of the training is honestly really boring. Like if I'm going to give someone like 4 sets of 5 at ascending RPE, so rated perceived exertion, where they got like 5 reps left in the tank, and every individual rep that they are doing with extremely high quality, and at a reasonable velocity. And I don't really do much with velocity these days, just because the prescribing RPE kind of replaces that. It's a lot more straightforward for someone to read on a like go and implement in the gym, but like it equates reasonably well to velocity. And then because that's kind of it, like because you go to your average gym, right? You're gonna see a lot of goofy stuff. And a lot of it really is just loads. Like if you did 10, 20 pounds less on the bar, odds are if you're doing like a set of 6 and the last 3 reps are kind of bad, 50% of your reps were bad. Like don't practice bad reps and you'll be like it'll suddenly like it'll your body will realize what a good rep is. That's really just it, because like the more you progressively overload doing 99% perfect technique for the given person, you will just never know what bad technique is because you've never practiced it. And then it'll, like once you go and test, like yeah, maybe you'll have some amount of deviation, but you should be strong and coordinated enough to kind of get through it.
Mhm.
And that's I feel like that's the biggest thing holding back like your average gym goer is because they're redlining every training session, not progressively overloading, and training it to like a threshold that they can't recover from or causes them to have technique deviation.
Mhm.
And so like it's the most boring advice ever. Like we don't even get complicated. Like we're not doing any like I'm sure you're familiar with conjugate stuff where we're like there's no bands and chains, there's no super maximal anything, there's no ISOs. It's just go do 3 sets of 5, make it look good. And like that's the thing though is like with the technique and neurological adaptation, the definition of what a good rep is like significantly more stringent when you're working with a high level powerlifting coach. It's very specific and it's very the standard is extremely high, and that's kind of the biggest difference that you'll see. That is the biggest benefit through this entire process. So yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you shedding light on that because I think it also goes to show like you do know there's a lot behind it, but you're distilling something also that could be quite complex down to something simple that generally works. Again, for most, I'm sure there's those one-off cases where you might need to balance volume and it's not just a repetitions-based approach. But I think yeah, you're distilling something complex to simple, and I love it.
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
along those lines, because you do talk about redlining a little bit. And before we were talking about warm-ups, what have you changed maybe with your training? I'm not saying you're old, but you've spent some time now in
Oh,
powerlifting.
I'm old. Don't worry. Don't you worry. I am
But
old and shitty.
but what have you learned maybe having gone through some injuries or aches and niggles that have created adjustments in your programming that just yeah, both as an athlete but also coach now with a lot of high level performers under your belt, having worked with them for some time, as well as just general population, seeing that breadth makes you kind of prepare individuals or set them up best for their own success. So
Yeah.
maybe they don't have to go down some of the same detours that you did. You can kind of prevent some aches and niggles for them as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've had many the detour.
Is it like volume management,
Yeah,
exercise
like I've
selectivity?
sorry, repeat that.
Yeah, if you could just speak to like if it's training frequency, if it's volume, if it's exercise selection, like what some of those things are that maybe are reflected now in your
Yeah,
programming.
yeah. Like a big change on my end is the I've had to gradually dial it down over the years. Like I've gone through adductor issues, lower back issues, shoulder issues, knee issues, elbow issue. Like I've had every injury under the sun. Um, Mostly from me being extremely stubborn, which is like, so when I work with someone, I'm like, hey, like, don't do that. Like, if there's something specific will happen, I'm not going to say you're going to get injured, but from my experience, don't do that. So the biggest change that I've like kind of accepted in my own training and kind of what I try to transfer to all the people I work with is like, just because you can work harder doesn't mean you need to. Like everyone always asks, like, hey, can I add stuff? Can I do more weight? Can I do more reps? Can I do more sets? And I gotta tell people, like, hey, you don't need to. Like there's no evidence supporting that you would need to add more to get more out of it. And what I try to tell people is like there's always some specific rate of progress that is your maximum potential. And you're not going to get more, you can't get 110% maximum potential in a given time by doing more. Um, so there's always the possibility that you can detract from that 100%. You can always mess up on your recovery. You can always overshoot. You can always like do bad reps in the gym. Like there's always opportunities to do worse. There's almost no opportunities to get to do better beyond what that 100% possibility is. So I tell like if you're doing like, and this is a lot of this stubborn, hot-headed people is like they're always asking, hey, can I like add 5, 10, 20 extra pounds on this training session? Like, but you don't need to. Like you're running the possibility of like more things going wrong than going right. To a certain extent, the load on the bar doesn't matter until you actually go compete and if they put it on a scorecard. Like practice is practice. Like you're gonna want to practice doing better than worse.
Mhm.
Like there's no extra for you to do. And like I need to tell myself that too. Is like I always want to add the 10 extra pounds to the bar. I always want to add that extra set or that extra training session. Yeah, like yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great insight. And I feel like there's always, the personalities of those that are workhorses that always want more, even if they're in the weight room but they should have been, an endurance junkie or something. And then there's those that are like, what's the bare minimum? I just want to lift some heavy load, like high intensity, low volume and get out. And yeah, obviously it's a continuum. Um, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts around, you know, well, I'll give you some background. So in college setting, right, most strength coaches work with teams, right? And we were talking about like earlier a little bit about like Minnesota with hockey or whatever, like a little bit more of a general templated versus that individualized type template, which can happen kind of probably more in your setting and my setting. Then like at a national organization where I'm currently at, we don't have quite general templates. Like I have the opportunity to get a little bit more individualized, but instead of it being a 4-year developmental process, that we're training athletes for, to be the best they can or, prepare them for the next level of their sport in 4 years or even a shorter time frame. I now have athletes where I have no NCAA regulations or restrictions. Sessions can be as long as I want, blah, 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 as well as I'm dealing with athletes that could be a 4-year game cycle, 2 or 3 game year cycle. So I'm working with an athlete from 1 year all the way up to possibly 10 plus years, which creates some like long-term athletic development in mind. And so the methods and approaches I might take might be more like, hey, we don't need to like rush this process. We can slow cook it. And to your point as well of like, you don't need to do more if you're going to get kind of the same work, it's unless you feel like you need to do more, like you'd be better recovered and you're still going to make the same progress. I'd love to hear what that looks like in your setting as far as like when people come to you and what's unique about your setting, I think that's very different than where I've spent the majority of my career is people are now paying, right? They're turning up because they want something and they want a result, right? They need some assistance. Whereas Where I've been collegiate, it's kind of mandatory, right? It is, as well as national team, it's kind of again optional, but also kind of mandatory, in quotes, where they're in support of a different goal. It's not the main goal, and so they're not technically really required to, lift more weight, right? They're supposed to be better at their sport. What's
Yep.
that look like for you? Because
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
you need an income, you need to retain people.
Yeah.
It's passion driven, but yeah, people are looking for results, I imagine.
Yeah. 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 I think the biggest difference kind of between like kind of your end and my end is that like there's no filter for like natural talent in powerlifting, which is a good thing actually. Like powerlifting is accessible to everyone,
Mm.
no matter where you're starting from or like who you are. And I think it really is a good thing with powerlifting. It's accessible and it's fun and it's a measurable amount of progress that like comparatively like I don't know, there's like it's a hobby sport in the end at the end of the day. You can treat it as professionally as you want to, and some people are like lucky enough to treat it as a full-time job. But when it comes to like your average person coming into the gym, like because there's such a high spread of skill level and talent, you kind of need to scale things and be comfortable with stepping back uh, and making sure, like whoever it may be, like your initial framework needs to allow that natural talent to rise and kind of match their skill level and motivation, as well as kind of holding back a little bit with for the people that need to work at their own pace or aren't just inherently good at it right away, and that's okay. Like there's no expectation that someone hops into powerlifting and is like a national champion in 2 years. People train like you can train for 10 years and still be like kind of middle of the pack. You can train for 1 year and like win first place. Like there, I have examples of both in my gym, and I've worked with both ends of it. A lot of it's psychological, and not so much of it's actually programming. The programming ends up kind of being the framework is the same. It's like sets, reps, go to the gym, do good reps, please.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's psychological. Like it's like there's a lot of pressure, especially kind of from like a in your end to be like a team thing. On my end, it's like you see the same people every day going to the gym. They're making their own progress, and you're making your own progress. But it's so easy to look at someone else and say, "Hey, why can't I make that amount of progress? Like, why aren't I doing as good? Why can't I hit those numbers?" And it's a bit of a comparison thing, and then it goes like it's a mental thing. Like it'll go to some people's head potentially, or like I've learned in like over my years, it's like there's always going to be someone stronger than you. There's always going to be someone who's naturally talented, more adept, stronger, faster. Like it's and it's more important that every individual does the work that they can do, regardless of what everyone else is doing. Because that, like I said, it's like you can only make a like your 100% possible progress, and looking at other people isn't gonna make that any better. So when we do things, it's like we want to make sure that everyone can do the best that they can do. Um, and a lot of it's going to look like the same stuff on paper, but part of it too is like when you're in the gym and like it's a social thing too. We want to make sure that everyone's being supportive of each other and like having like a good mesh of social and performance. Where
Yeah.
comparatively, it's like if you're in a team sport, it's like yeah, you're obligated to go do the lifting part of it as a supplement to the your actual sport. Um, so it's like a self-efficacy thing too. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if that got to the point, but
No, I think you did. And I think it's cool. We kind of started around this idea of community too, where, I've seen some posts from your Kilo S&P kind of account around like a group cookout or different things like that, like social events and parallel. So like if I were someone, right, I came to you, Sean, I want you to coach me and it's in person. What might like a typical, I don't know, like use any example you want, a typical like session one-on-one look like? Is it an hour? Is it 30 minutes? Does it just depend on our like the goals or whatever it is that we set up initially? And what else might I expect like beyond that coaching? Like, am I going to bump into buddies or like people that are welcoming? Maybe you could just
Yeah,
speak because you do such an excellent job, and hopefully you can kind of illustrate that
yeah,
to our listeners. Because I totally hear what you're saying about the whole social side. And I think it's absolutely excellent. So if you could illustrate that, that would be
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I will start by saying that I'm not in charge of every single person that comes into my gym. The grand scheme of the gym itself is that it is an open gym. It's 24/7 access, and people can just get a gym membership. They are not obligated to be trained by me. We have a couple other coaches that work out of my gym, as well as just general population. We have another like private trainer that does like youth sports. So part of my job is, hey, I'm the owner of the gym. I'm kind of the wizard behind the curtain, kind of managing everyone without getting too involved. But at the same time, I'm also training a lot of people, whether it be powerlifting or general fitness, like a one-on-one training session. So to answer your question about like actually doing a one-on-one session, um, it really just depends on the goal for that person. And it, like it'll end inevitably for a first session. It's going to be, hey, like let's just assess what you're capable of. Let's establish what your goals for being in the gym are, and then build a plan around that. So I have a 7-year old lady that just wants to work out so she can stay healthy and train for longevity. That actually will look very different than someone who comes in and says, hey, I want to be like a nationally ranked powerlifter. Like I've been training for 3 years already and I kind of know what I'm doing. Like I just want to get that next level. Those two conversations will look pretty different. There's like everything in the middle too. So, but like for a new person, there's all the basic stuff. It's like you do an intake. We want to know, hey, training history, sport background, injury history, anything current that is bothering you, what the goals are, and then do some level of movement assessment that's relative to their actual goals. I have a mini gripe about made up movement metrics. Like, no one's going to be like, the stick thing, like the overhead squat stick test.
Like FMS and stuff like that.
Most people won't like be good at that. Like, but it doesn't matter. No one's going to be doing that. like if it doesn't matter for their actual goal, and like you can't just make someone do a test that they're going to fail and be like, oh, you're bad. You need to pay me $100 an hour. Um, so like we just scale things to actually get to the point of what they're trying to accomplish. So for example, like my 7-year old lady, like our biggest goals are, can you get up and down off the floor? Can you balance on one leg? Can your joints feel good throughout the day? That's kind of our major metric for our quality training is. But then when it comes to like the powerlifter that comes in, like, hey, we have this training history. You're pretty strong already. We're nitpicking. We're getting really granular with what your movement discrepancies are and where we can improve. But also at the same time, most experienced powerlifters have those like random aches and pains, or like, hey, like my adductor hurts once I squat like over 20 reps over 500 pounds over the course of a 4-week training period. What do we do about that? So that gets a little more complicated, less straightforward, and takes a little bit. It's a bit more of an art form, as well as like a communication thing with that athlete. And like I will say too, it's like I'm not a physical therapist, but I kind of do fit that role just a little bit to the best of my capabilities within reason. And it's one of those things that a lot of powerlifting coaches should be cautious about is if you're not a physical therapist, you shouldn't really be prescribing physical therapy to people and saying, hey, if you do this, it will fix you, because that's you can't, like, you're not supposed to say that. But at the same time, it's like if people are paying you to do a job and the outcome does involve some level of pain mitigation and movement proficiency that can involve the physical therapy like implements. And that is very much one of those things that comes with like coaching experience, is where to draw that line and where to implement things where like, and I keep coming back to this. It's like, and I'm gonna call out Squat University. Every single one of his posts is like, if you do this, you're not going to get injured, guaranteed. And if you have this thing, you're going to get injured. You're going to die. And it's just not true. That's like a logical fallacy. It's like not a one-to-one thing. Like pain science, it's way up there. It's way more complicated than what it may seem to be when people ask about it in person or what you may see online. And it's like one of those things that is a big part of the job, whether it be maybe for like that 70-year-old lady or that like high level power lifter. It matters.
Hmm.
But in the end, it's like, where do you draw the line? How do you implement things to where you can say that you can implement things to mitigate the possibility that it could matter in the future. And then at the same time, like, hey, like when is it the right time to hand things off to an actual physical therapy professional? And I kind of took that often in a different direction than where we started, but I wanted to say it.
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it so
for sure. Is there anything you have coming up, whether it's business related? Obviously, you mentioned the competition you're personally competing in, kind of later this month. Anything, yeah, business related or personal education or events that you kind of want to highlight coming up?
yeah. There's always stuff going on. On the personal end of things, I'm competing in this upcoming meet. It's called Rising Tide. It'll be a big one. A lot of the competitors that are well, the competing are members at the gym, along with a lot of people that are coming out of state. A big movement in kind of the powerlifting space right now is really hot, like well-run, high production quality, small invite-only meets, and I think that's a good thing. I'll be somewhat involved in the running process for the event along with competing. I try to help where I can with things like that, but then at the same time, I try to keep up with the kids these days. It's like I'm not making no promises about me being like national champion at this point in time, but I like to still hit PRs and I try to stay involved on my end. Like it's one of those things where it's like if I'm coaching clients for powerlifting, they want to a certain extent, they want to see their coach be well, like do powerlifting well, and still be hitting PRs. Just it's one of those like appeal to authority type of things.
Yeah.
So that meets coming up. The gym's doing good. We're trying to move soon. The My lease is almost up at that first place, and I'm really gunning for an expansion. And like the lay of the land in the Twin Cities area, I'm in St. Paul right now, right next to downtown, and it's actually like kind of a bad location. The reason why I have this location currently is because I got super lucky on the CrossFit gym that I bought out during COVID. And at the time too, I didn't want to be too close to any of my competitors and kind of spread things out, just so I had a didn't have to fight for the clients that were around. But at this point, like I think I have the ability to put a location in a spot that works the best for me. And that's in the works. It's all like a paperwork thing. It's happening soon. I won't say too much quite yet because every time I say something, something bad happens. I don't want to jinx it. But the long term plan with the gym too is like it is kind of too small as it stands right now. Like yes, it's a really tight knit community, but think of like the percentage of general gym goers. A fraction of a percent are actual power lifters, and I've niched down so much to the point where I don't necessarily have a space conducive for your average gym goer. And at the end of the day, a powerlifting gym membership costs the same amount as a general fitness gym membership. And if anything, the training Gen Pop makes you more money than training powerlifters, to be honest. So with the space change, being able to bring more people in and diversify the demographic, I think will be a good thing for the powerlifters too, is because like you see the same 30 people every day, things get a little stale. Like you want to see new people in. And beyond that, too, growing powerlifting as a whole. And we're kind of like if it feels too exclusive of a space, new people aren't necessarily wanting to come in versus we have like a diverse offering and welcoming for everyone, or at least more people, and still keep that powerlifting aspect. I think more people will generate like maybe like 1 out of 30 people may say, "Hey, I want to try powerlifting," and I feel okay in the gym already. Let me hop in and get more serious. Versus kind of the consensus right now with the current space is that like, oh, it's already everyone's already serious about powerlifting, so that's a little scary. But like I can't fault someone for being a little intimidated. I think it's a little silly. But that's like marketing too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you got some good stuff in the works, Sean. And I do have to ask because I've seen some artwork slowly peel up on your thigh and arm. Any more tattoos or artwork planned for you?
Yeah. Well, nothing. Well, let's see if I can. I've been slowly collecting tattoos. So all right, for all the fans, this is um got this guy. It's actually a terrible position to have this tattoo because it rubs right where I put my hands when I deadlift.
Mm.
But actually, my college friend did this. They're a tattoo artist now. I got to get the color done after my meet, but I've been slowly filling it out. Got this guy in Copenhagen on a little vacation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the I told myself I would take one real vacation to cap off my 20s, and no vacations until I hit 30. So I got 2 more years where I'm going to try really hard to lock in on just work and get the whole gym thing set in stone. So I like because it's a long term thing for me. If I'm the gym owner, it is my livelihood. At the end of the day, I need it to be self sufficient enough to where I can kind of go and do things that I enjoy a little bit more. So I gotta really crank it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, Sean, or find you, we can certainly drop your handle and links and whatnot if you share them in the description to the episodes. But
For
I really
sure. Yeah.
appreciate your time connecting.
Yeah.